Level 1. The errand boy. You carry things. That's it. That's the whole job. A bag from one address to another, a phone to a man sitting in the back of a restaurant, an envelope, just like the one that started this, to a third-floor apartment where nobody answers the door, they just open it. You don't know what's inside. That's by design. The man who recruited you is called Dima. He's not scary in the way you expected. He's calm, well-dressed. He explains one rule: you finish what you start. That's all. One rule: you nod like it's simple. You make $400 a week, cash. You tell yourself it's temporary. The neighborhood you grew up in doesn't have good options. You've watched men work 40 years in factories and die with nothing. You've watched others drive Mercedes by 25. The math isn't complicated, so you carry things. You learn the streets. You learn which bakeries are meeting points, which parking garages have cameras and which don't, which police officers look the other way, and which ones need to be avoided entirely. You're building a map of a city inside the city, a parallel geography that most people never see. After 6 weeks, Dima nods at you differently. That nod means something. You don't know exactly what yet, but you feel it in your chest like a key turning. Level 2, the street tax collector. Now you have a list. 12 businesses, a dry cleaner, 3 restaurants, a car wash, 2 convenience stores, a tailor, a gym, and 4 others that operate in ways you don't fully understand and aren't supposed to ask about. Every 2 weeks, you visit each one. You knock, you wait. They hand you an envelope. You don't threaten anyone, not explicitly. You don't have to. Your presence is the threat. The structure behind you is the threat. You're just the face of an agreement that was made before you arrived. Most owners hand it over without eye contact. One man, a Georgian who runs a restaurant on Lenina Street, looks at you every time like he wants to say something. He never does. You clear $2,200 a week now. You move into a better apartment. You buy a coat that costs more than your father made in a month. You tell yourself you're not hurting anyone. These businesses operate under protection. If you weren't collecting, someone worse would be. You believe that. Mostly. There's a Tuesday in February when it goes wrong. One of the restaurant owners is short. Not by much. 8,000 rubles. He's apologetic. His eyes are wet. He has a daughter. You've seen her. You tell him you'll note it. You leave. You report the shortfall to Dima exactly as it happened. Dima sends someone else the following week. You never see that restaurant owner again. You don't ask what happened. You already know that asking is worse than knowing. Level 3, the enforcer. You've stopped carrying envelopes. Now you carry a reputation. Your job is simple in theory. Problems get solved. A debtor who stopped answering calls. A business that tried to change protection arrangements. A man who talked to someone he shouldn't have talked to. You work with a partner named Ruslan. Ruslan is older. He has a scar across his left knuckle and doesn't explain how he got it. He teaches you that violence is a language, and like any language, most of the power is in what you don't say. You show up. You make it clear you can return. That's usually enough. There are 3 moments in your first year as an enforcer that you will carry for the rest of your life. You don't think about them constantly, but they're there. Filed in a part of your mind you've learned to keep locked. You stop sleeping well. You tell yourself it's the schedule. You start drinking more than you used to. You tell yourself it's social. The money is better, $6,000 a week, sometimes more depending on the job. You've started keeping cash in 2 locations. You've opened a 3rd account under a cousin's name. The thing nobody tells you about this level is the boredom. Most days, nothing happens. You wait, you drive, you sit in cars for hours. Your mind works in the silence, and you've learned that a working mind at this level starts finding dark things to think about. Ruslan notices one night. He looks at you over the table and says, "You can't take it with you when you go to sleep. Leave it in the car. It's the most useful advice anyone has ever given you." You try. Level 4, the brigade commander. You have 6 men now. You didn't choose all of them. 2 were assigned. 4 you picked yourself. Boys from the neighborhood who reminded you of yourself 2 years ago. Hungry, careful, good at reading rooms. You're responsible for a territory. Not just collecting anymore. Overseeing. Your 6 men collect, enforce, and report to you. You report to a man named Volkov, who you see once a week in a private room above a sports bar. Volkov is 52. He has the handshake of a man who used to break things with his hands and now just watches others do it. You clear $18,000 a week. Most of it moves through a construction company that exists primarily on paper. At this level, the job is information. Who's producing? Who's skimming? Who's developing problems? Your men are your eyes, and you have to know when one of them is lying to you. You learn to read people the way a doctor reads an X-ray, looking for the hairline fractures, the things slightly out of place. One of your men, the youngest, 21, a kid named Kolya, starts showing up late. His explanations are too detailed. You watch him for 3 weeks before you act. When you confront him, he cries. He's been skimming small amounts. Nothing dramatic, but the amount doesn't matter. The rule isn't about money, it's about what skimming means. It means he considered it. It means he calculated the risk and decided you were manageable. That's the real crime. You handle it internally. You don't go to Volkov. You solve it yourself, demote Kolya to the lowest errand, and replace him. Volkov later tells you that was the right call. A commander who can't manage his own house doesn't deserve one. You start understanding that loyalty is a performance until it becomes a reality. Your job is to make the performance last long enough to become real. Level 5. The Avtoritet, the authority. You have a title now, not official. Nothing is official, but people use a word for what you are. Avtoritet, authority. It means you've earned a position that exists between the working level and the leadership. You're not management. You're not street. You're the bridge, the person both sides need to function. You oversee 3 brigades, 18 men total. Your territory generates $200,000 a month. Of that, 60% moves upward. You keep the rest distributed. Your commanders, their men, operating expenses, and your own cut, which has grown to something you still find difficult to fully believe. You've bought a car under a company name. You own a share in a hotel through 4 layers of paperwork. Your official job is listed as a logistics consultant. The danger at this level is different. It's not violence. Violence is below you now. You authorize it, you don't perform it. The danger is political. Other men at your level who want what you have. Men above you who might see you as a liability. Police contacts who need to be maintained at exactly the right temperature. Warm enough to be useful, cool enough to maintain deniability. Your wife doesn't ask questions anymore. She used to. There was a period when she pushed, when she wanted explanations, when she said things at night that made the air in the room feel different. Then something shifted. You don't know if she accepted it, or simply gave up, or understood something she wishes she didn't. You have a daughter now. She's 3. She doesn't know what you do. She won't for a very long time, maybe never. You think about this more than anything else. Level 6. The Brigadier General of the organization. Volkov dies on a Tuesday. Not violently. A heart attack, 62 years old, in a private hospital outside Moscow. It's almost anticlimactic. You attend the funeral in a dark coat. You stand 3 rows back from the family. You don't speak. Within 6 weeks, you have his position. Not through violence, through a series of conversations, meetings, agreements, the right words said to the right men at the right times. You've spent years learning who holds what, who owes who, which alliances are real and which are performance. When the moment came, you were ready. You now oversee an entire region, 7 brigades, 40-plus men, multiple legitimate business fronts, construction, hospitality, import. The legal businesses aren't just covers anymore. They're real revenue streams. You employ accountants. You have a lawyer who is not explicitly on the payroll, but is always available and never surprised by anything you ask. $1.2 million a month flows through your network. You touch perhaps $200,000 of it. You rarely leave the city anymore. You don't meet with street-level men directly. You communicate through 2 intermediaries. Your name is spoken carefully in rooms you're not in. When you enter a room, the energy changes before you say a word. This is what power actually feels like. Not violence, not money. It's the alteration of atmosphere, the fact that your presence rearranges everyone's behavior before you've done anything at all. You have 3 phones, each one for a different category of relationship. None of them are in your name. You sleep better than you did at level 3. That surprises you. You've also stopped feeling much. Not in a dramatic way, just a slow, gradual settling, like a room that's been rearranged so many times you've forgotten what the original layout looked like. You make decisions now that would have horrified you at 22. You make them quickly, move on, and don't revisit them. That's not numbness. That's professionalism. That's what you tell yourself. Level 7. The Vor v Zakon, thief in law. There are fewer than 300 of you in the world. That's not an exaggeration. It's not mythology. The Vor v Zakone, thief in law, is the highest formal rank in the criminal underworld. It is granted, not taken. You are voted in by existing members in a ceremony that has its own ritual, its own language, its own weight. The code is old, older than you. It comes from Soviet prisons where men created a parallel society when the state tried to erase them. The original Vori lived by strict rules, no cooperation with authorities, no legitimate employment, no family, because family creates leverage. A VOR belongs to the Brotherhood entirely. Those original rules have bent over decades. The modern world demands flexibility, but the core remains. You are a sovereign. You answer to the code. The code answers to nothing. Your influence extends beyond your region now. You mediate disputes between factions in cities you've never lived in. Your word is a currency that can stop violence, authorize it, or transform it into something else entirely. Men who have never met you conduct business based on your reputation. You've met politicians, not in the way most people imagine. No handshakes in dark rooms. It's more subtle than that. It's the event you both attend, the intermediary who moves between two worlds, the favor that travels through 4 hands before it reaches the person who needed it. You are, on paper, a retired businessman. You live quietly, you travel occasionally. You have a security arrangement that never draws attention, because it was designed by people who understand that attention is the real vulnerability. You are 61 years old. You have very few friends. You have not been genuinely surprised by anything a human being has done in approximately 15 years. The isolation is something you understood was coming. You watched it happen to the men above you when you were coming up. You thought you'd handle it differently. You didn't. It's not something you can handle differently. The isolation is the position. The men who surround you are loyal. You believe that. You also know that loyalty at this level is maintained not by affection, but by mutual understanding. Everyone in your orbit understands exactly what stepping out of line would mean. That's not the same as loyalty, but it functions the same way, mostly. At night, in the apartment you've owned for 12 years, you sit sometimes in the same chair for an hour without turning on the television, just sitting, thinking about the particular nothing that fills a life when you've already arrived at the only destination you were ever moving toward. You chose this. You'd probably choose it again. That's the thing that doesn't leave you alone. Level 8. The shadow. The man the system runs on. You don't have a title anymore. Titles are for men who still need others to confirm what they are. You are not in any file that a journalist could access. Your name appears in no court record, no financial disclosure, no Interpol database. There are men who know you exist. A handful who have met you. None who would speak your name to anyone who asked. You are not retired. Retirement is a concept for people inside legitimate systems. You simply moved further from the surface. The work continues. It always continues. But now it moves through layers of people and structures and arrangements so dense that even the men directly below you don't fully understand the architecture. 3 countries, significant assets in 2 more. Businesses that employ thousands of people who will never know they're working inside something larger than they can see. Political relationships that predate the current administration and will outlast the next one. The infrastructure of a small city. Banking, logistics, real estate, security. Operating beneath the visible economy like a second skeleton. You are 74 years old. You walk with a cane now, not because of violence. You were never shot, never seriously hurt. Your knee, an old injury from a football match when you were 19, before all of it. The world you came from is almost unrecognizable. The Soviet Union collapsed. The 90s happened. Men you knew were killed, imprisoned, defected, transformed into something else. You adapted each time, not because you're exceptional, because you understood one thing earlier than most. The system is always bigger than the person inside it. The ones who confuse themselves for the system are the ones who break. You are not the system. You're part of it. You always have been. You live simply now. A house outside the city, a garden, a housekeeper who has worked for you for 22 years and who you trust the way you trust gravity, not because of affection, but because of consistency. Your children are adults. They live separate lives in separate countries. They are protected. They do not know the full shape of what protects them. Some mornings you sit with coffee and read the news from 4 countries and feel something close to satisfaction. Not happiness. Satisfaction is different. It's the quiet recognition that the machinery is running, that nothing has broken in the night, that the architecture holds. The cost of this life is a very particular kind of loneliness that has no cure, and that you stopped looking for a cure to approximately 15 years ago. You knew the cost. You paid it. You'd pay it again. The cycle continues without your direct involvement now. It continued before you understood it. It will continue long after you are gone. Somewhere in the city tonight, a young man is standing at a table. There's an envelope in front of him. He didn't put it there. He doesn't ask who did. He's doing the math. The factory, the Mercedes, the debt he already carries, the particular narrowness of the world he was born into. He thinks he's making a choice. He isn't. He picks up the envelope. The door closes behind him. He has no idea what he's just agreed to become. You do. You were him once. And somewhere behind you, a long way back, there was a man like you watching a young man like him and thinking exactly what you're thinking now. The cycle doesn't end. It just moves to the next one.